I became a blonde over the last week. I'm gonna let you guys know how that works out for me.
It goes with the suit.
So I'm currently the Associate Controller of Student Accounting, Billing, and Cashier Services at Rutgers University. I've been here for the last 7 years. And so some of my areas of oversight, as we talk about managing administrative change and navigating leadership, some of my areas of oversight has remained the same and probably a little bit adding on and on over the years. So student accounting, billing, and cashier services, the next slide. Student accounting, billing, and cashier services, we service about 70,000 students. We bill about 1.6 billion and reconcile that every year. And direct payments received through Nelnet, e-check, credit card, and also cash, 772 mil. And of course, as you can see, there's a difference between that and 1.6. So the rest is in financial aid and or end up in collections with Dero Rashad right over here. We issue about $230 million in refunds, and again, delinquent accounts, we're talking about 2.4 million. I don't know how many students that translates into, but these are typically students that are no longer enrolled after the semester. And so when we talk about areas of oversight, I'm overseeing the tuition and fee billing for all the campuses, Newark, New Brunswick, Camden, and the medical school. Oversight on the New Brunswick Payment Center. So when I asked about cash before, we were really trying to go cashless. But then, of course, in New Jersey, the law says we have to take cash. Yeah. So what we did with the multiple cashier locations, we consolidated into one payment center. And we oversee the tuition payment plans, third-party billing and third-party and sponsored billing, IRS reporting for 1098-T and the Form 8300, refunds, loans, accounting reconciliation, websites, communication, things like that. Since joining Rutgers, so this is interesting now, and this is where it gets into managing administrative changes. One of the things I wanted to ask you all here, in your current role, how many different people have you been reporting to over the years? And I'm gonna, every time I say a number, you put your hand up and let me know. So one boss, 2 bosses, 3, 4. Notice my hand is not gone down. 5. Okay, and I think 6 is coming along. So with that being said, over the years, we've had a lot of leadership changes in student ABC, and each leadership comes with a different goal. So one leader wants automation, one doesn't want it. One wants us to go with Nelnet, one doesn't want it. So, you know, we've been dancing or doing this dance over the years, and what I have to say is I'm really grateful for the staff that I have here right now, because through all the storms and tornadoes and hurricanes and earthquakes that we've been through, we're still standing strong. And one of the most important things for me personally as a leader is making sure that the staff that reports directly to me or is reporting to the people that are reporting to me is supported in the best way that I can. So in 2017, I started off with about 40 plus employees, and we are, I think, at 26 right now. But the key is we are actually processing more now with 26 employees versus 40 plus. How is that possible? Well, we've automated a lot of processes that were paper-based, there was a lot of things that were happening. We had lines of students coming in to do things that we could have done online. So we became a little bit smarter and creative when it came to organizational and leadership change, when it comes to staffing change. Once a position got vacated, what we started doing is looking at the role, figuring out what is it that this person was doing that could be either automated or either be a way for us to look at either upgrading another role or changing the position to be either higher, lower, wherever it is in the process, and then be smart about rehiring for those roles. So over the years, we've been able to get a lot of the people on staff in different roles upgraded or moving to a different area of operation where they're now thriving. I think they are, and they're happy. And just looking for opportunities to give people the opportunity to do more and to grow. And so, yes, the question was, can you get somebody? You answered it.
How many for you?
6 is coming
6?
up. Yeah, in 7 years. Okay, and so I just wanted, this is kind of like just a picture of the fact that over the years, even though we've gone down in size, we're still processing in the same manner. And this is just a snippet of some of the things we did. I picked on the refunds today because Ellie is here, of course. And so as you can see, while the billing has fluctuated over the years in terms of enrollment and how many students have enrolled, the process has pretty much remained consistent over the years.
Fewer checks.
Yes, fewer checks. So that's also a testament to. So one of the things that we've been trying to advocate for is to outsource our check printing process through Nelnet. And we know that that would actually give us a lot more leverage in order to get students to sign up for ACH. We have not been successful as yet in getting the approval, but hopefully my new boss will see what I'm seeing, see the vision, and then that would help us to get to another level. And that would also help us not to put so much burden on the manual processing of actually having checks printed, but would actually have us remain consistent in processing at the same level with less employees.
She's not getting rid of you though.
Okay, and so while over the years, so I talked about the fact that we have less employees, we have all these leadership changes, but we're introducing new systems and new processes. And so these are two of the new systems that was introduced during the times of transitional changes and organizational changes that we, even though we have a smaller staff, still had to try to do training, learn all of these, do different things. With Oracle Student Financial Planning, I don't know if anyone heard about that, and the financial aid system. Although it's financial aid, we also had to do a lot of training and transition in order to make sure that we were back up to speed in understanding how to process payments, tuition, all that stuff with these new systems. And so some of the process improvements that we've done over the years that has helped us to continue remaining consistent with less staff. We've done a little bit of a website redesign, so less students are coming in asking us where to find information on the website. So I think that's key. Communication, as we talked about, I think Mary Beth just talked about that. Clear communication is very helpful, as clear as it can get. So website redesign went into, we did that so that students could have less interaction with us. Not that we don't want to see them, but we want them to get the information as quickly as possible. Tuition remission automation, we had employees bringing in paper in our offices for us to process. And I don't know if you guys know how I feel about paper. But my staff laughs because if I walk around the office and I see paper on their desk, it's gonna be a lot of questions. Why do we have paper? What is that for? So what do we do? Why do we do that? Okay, can we get rid of the paper? And so with all of that long line of people bringing in paper and stamping and doing all that stuff, that all went away, and the automation of tuition remissions started coming into play. We worked with our My Rutgers portal. That's the portal where students are going to see their information about how much they owe. The My Money widget, we have a widget that we provide for students to get that information quickly. On the RBHS side as well as the legacy side. So when we talk about any of this, we're talking about two different entities that are still trying to come together as one, the medical school as well as the legacy. The medical school is on Banner. The legacy is on a system that's older than every one of us in this room. I can guarantee you there's nobody older than our system in this room. And then we got Nelnet, of course, our saving grace. This is not an advertisement, but they have been really helpful. And I've worked with Lori before at other institutions. I was at Columbia University before. And the relationship that I've had with Nelnet and how they've helped with a lot of the processes that we've been doing here at the university and in prior institutions have been really, really helpful. We talk about refunds, right? So before Ellie, we created what's called a refunds team where they're solely dedicated to processing refunds. We didn't have that in the past before. So with that creation of the refunds team, I think we are at such a great space now where they can quickly process emergency refunds, get things out the door, assess quickly if there's an issue, stop the checks if there's an issue, print the checks if there is an issue, if they need to get things out faster. They've been very, really helpful and a great organizational change that has helped manage the less staff that we're working, the small amount of staff that we're working with. And then I talked about consolidating the cashier operations. We had about 5 different cashier locations, and now we just have one. When you think about in the grand scheme of things, where we are billing about $2 billion in tuition and fees, and I'm not sure how much in cash is still coming in.
Less than 1%.
Less than 1% in cash, right? So when you think about 5 different locations and less than 1% in cash of $2 billion or $1.6 billion, it makes sense to consolidate and have that one location. So that's how we've been able to also survive with less staff in this situation. And then we have our Tableau student dashboard, or the dashboard that gives us some data that helps us actually manage where to put resources at certain times of the year. And then we have tuition and fee subcommittee that we work with to make sure that the tuition and fees that we have on the bills are correct. Okay, so I anticipated some questions that I know that you or I or anyone will always ask whenever there is organizational change or leadership change. And that is, how do you build trust when it comes to new leadership? So I think I'm the winner when it comes to the amount of people that that's what we're famous for. In New Jersey, right? With leadership change over the years, and I don't know if any one of the staff want to talk about. I don't want to give myself any sort of accolades, but
But she will.
No, but it's trying to, Catherine always says this to me, you know, if you see the person that you report to go crazy, then it's gonna make your staff go crazy. If you're calm, then they're gonna be calm. So one of the things that I try to do when it comes to leadership change is, number one, be very transparent with what's happening. As much as I know, I let them know. And then try to anticipate what we believe is gonna happen, and then try to prepare for what that might be. And so I think consistently we've been doing that almost every year since I've been here. So it's a way to try to build trust with staff, and a way to try to have the staff trust that they too will be okay with a new leader in place. I can't guarantee that will work everywhere, but does anyone else, when they have leadership changes, what sort of things do you do? Do you have any ideas of how you can help us or we can help you when you have changes?
Can you clarify what leadership change would mean?
So the person that my area would report to, or any senior leadership area.
I think it goes back to the common denominator of communication. I mean, you know, I try to communicate with my team be as transparent as you can without kind of giving more than you should or could, but just to kind of keep them in the loop and let them be in the know.
Yeah.
Because I find that a lot of the staff they just want to feel like they're part of it. They want to know what's going on. They don't want to just be kind of surprised. I mean, you know, we got a portal message a few weeks ago that they're researching an executive vice president. Okay, well, I haven't been around the college that long, but when I start to talk to the likes that have been there, I'm like, what does this mean? And it's kind of like, then you start to learn that, oh, it means that maybe the president is starting to plan his retirement. Remember, this is Vegas, you didn't hear that from me. What's the timeline? You know, so then rather than getting all the buzz going on and you have to kind of squash the buzz, just say, here's what we know. You know, so communication.
So, yeah, transparency. I think that has worked well, if I'm not mistaken.
It's important, I think, for the new leadership or for staff to believe that the new leadership knows what they do in their day-to-day jobs and what their office is responsible for. So we have a new chancellor at the University of Massachusetts, and he wanted to meet with our staff. So we met with him, but in addition to introducing ourselves, we also had a fun fact about the office. And the fun fact was how many bills we produced, how much money we took in, a lot of your stats, or the stats that I've seen this morning, just to give him an idea of volume and what the people sitting in front of him actually do on a daily basis. And that was very successful in having that trust start, because now we know he knows what we do. And so he's gonna make decisions knowing what his staff is doing. And so that seemed to work out pretty well.
What I find with that is in different leaders, so 2 leaders ago, he was very open and understanding and wanted to hear more about what we did, asked what was our thoughts on the things that we needed, and tried to support as best as possible, as long as he understood the urgency, how it would affect the students, family, other offices, etc. 2 bosses now, boss's boss, is the type of person, when you provide that sort of stats, they automatically provide a solution without hearing anything else. Or just send a text message and everything will be fine. And you're like, no, it's not just that, right? So I also think that's a great idea, but it also depends on the leader and how invested they are in the position, or invested in trying to learn or understand what your areas are doing, right? So I don't know if any one of you here in senior leadership roles, I would suggest being a little bit open and listening to the people that report into you, and just because they too have goals, they too have wishes, ideas. They want you to hear them, but sometimes you just feel like you're just not being heard. It is dependent on the leadership that, that's report, yes.
I have a question. So, having experienced some similar leadership changes as you, I'm also from Rutgers University. So I found that sometimes, new leaders come in and they have certain experience with their previous, institutions, or sometimes, if they're coming from private, their companies, and with Rutgers, we're much larger in scale than, a large number of other universities. How have you navigated that, kind of translating their maybe goals that they had preconceived before they, began talking to people at the university, maybe experiencing how we do things here, and kind of, without squashing their goals, just kind of translate that, maybe it'll take longer, or just it'll involve more things to do, those things here.
So I have to admit, when I came here first, I came from Columbia University, which is a very different institution in how they manage things than here. They're a little bit more structured when it comes to documenting processes, making sure that this, that, and the other is clearly outlined, and there is a little bit of a hierarchy of what you do when things happen, right? So coming from Columbia here and trying to say, this is what happened at Columbia, so I can do it here. I too fell into that trap, but I quickly, when I spoke to the people that I was reporting into me, and I said, so why don't we do this here? And then they say, well, this and that happens, and this and that happens. So it's while we do come in with our ideas of what happened at a previous institution that may have worked, I think it's really important to listen to the people that reports to you, or people, doesn't have to report to you either, but the people around you. In some cases, we can do it. We could have done it before, right? So they didn't, so there's areas that once I question and it says, so why do we do this? Why do we get this extra paperwork? I don't think we have to do that. Or in some cases, I understand why we can't do that yet. And then here is another way that we could probably get around that solution. So it's opening the ears and listening. That's what it is. I think that was the key. Because I too went through that same exact thing. The problem is, and I think I know the common denominator that we are referencing, right? When that person at that level and you're trying to tell them, please have an open mind and understand that while it worked there, there's so much more layers here at the university, which is such a bigger arena to play in, that it's not Division III basketball, it's Division I. But I have learned a great deal about personality and leadership over the years, and how to navigate the different personalities. Hopefully this is the last one that will happen, but you never know. I may be here again at another conference talking about leadership change, and it will be 8. And I did talk about this a little bit. When someone leaves a position, how do you reevaluate that position? Can anyone tell me if they had any sort of, how do you deal with when people are leaving and you don't get that position refilled, or you can't get it refilled?
So right now we're dealing with that with the refunds. It's me now. I don't have a refund team. So I would like, I have someone who's remote and I want to fill that position with my remote person, but senior leadership has said, no, we can't do it remote. right? So how are you able to get those position reevaluations to be considered by the senior leadership?
So how come they're remote?
So she's customer service temporary for the summer, but I would like to roll her into the refund position because I feel like she's been with us for a few summers now and she's fantastic.
So I think the university, at Rutgers, the university made a policy change that you get 2 days remote, 3 days in person.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody is the same. So it's not like one person can be remote all the time and
Right.
then one person has to come in.
And it's not so much about the remoteness, it's more of that position needs to either be expanded or just absorbed into something else. So how do I get that to the senior leadership to expand on how to get them to understand that the way that they may have it on paper isn't accurate and isn't working for our current office.
Change.
Great.
Yeah, don't you need to
Change
work
the
with your?
Why do you have paper?
We had
Sometimes
a
you can't get away from.
and you said with the refund team, our refund team is our financial aid, well now controller, because they can control all things financial aid once they're processed. And I had a situation, and I think I was mentioning to you during COVID, the person in that role up and relocated to Florida.
Oh, well, how nice.
And was working remote, but they had us over a barrel because that job is so specific and so deadline oriented and so everything that I was like, okay, I just gotta bide my time, I gotta get through this craziness that we're in. And then I just had to keep being that squeaky wheel and saying, here's what this job's really doing, here's what they really need to do, and then I finally got the ears of them and they're like, okay, we got
And data.
and financial aid, when I say they're dealing with 60% of our revenue and then the refunds to the students, and they have to be on campus, and then we put it out to the person, you need to come back to campus. That lasted about 2 weeks. He said, well, I quit. I'm like, okay, bye. And then, we just had to keep squeaking. I mean, it took a long time, but even after that happened, it still took 4 months for me to be able to get it all done. Yeah, so it was us doing something. I mean, thank God, because I was like, huh? So it's just you've got to keep gathering your data,
Yes.
gathering your facts, and oh hey, here's an update. Oh, by the way, here's an update. And doing it in that communicative approach that says.
We
You're
did kind of get sneaky at one point because we just decided to go set base in the president's office and let them see what we were having to do.
Yes.
For 3 days.
For 3 days. And
During
so
our
we
big
decided
financial
to
aid
do
run,
that. We couldn't be in our office doing what we were really supposed to be doing in our office.
And then I was
So-
like, oh, I guess we need to pay attention then. And they wouldn't even open the door. They're like, how's it going in there? I'm like, you really want to come in here? Because I mean,
Are you guys processing refunds manually?
Oh, boy.
no.
So with our financial aid, we actually use the Nelnet Student Choice Refunds platform for those. And that's what we went and locked ourselves in a room for 3 days to try to get done for our big financial aid run for the semester. But we do still process manual refunds. In fact, in the hotel room, I've got a stack of schedule bills that I'm going through and signing off on to be processed, when we get back. So yes and no to that.
That's yes and no to everything that we do though. Yes, we do some manual, yet no, so to your point and to your question about how do you reevaluate the position, we're constantly doing that. We're constantly saying, hey, we have all these different levels of positions, and when one leaves, and she went into a role that had like more than 50% vacancy and trying to do the same amount of work, to your point, but you can't do it in some cases. We're constantly just saying, okay, what do you do and what do you do? Okay, let's see. And because in our system and as a state agency in Delaware, we have to be careful of class specifications, and are you working outside of your class? Are you doing what you're not allowed to do? Because fairness and everything else. So we're on the phone all the time. I'm like, hey, who's doing this at your campus to make sure that we're doing those kinds of things?
Yeah.
I mean, but it's really being the squeaky wheel and just having all that information and documenting. Oh, well, Jan had to process, 3,500 refunds today, or this. Okay, just throwing numbers out there.
So like-
Details.
So yes, the details,
The
the
devil's in the
data
detail.
actually works as well too. So going back to the example of closing the cashiers locations, the 5 locations, we had like, 6 or 8, I think, or 10 people total in the cashiers' offices, but bringing in like cash of, I don't know, $600,000 a year or whatever. And our cashiers were able to do so much more. So we have Pooja on the refunds team now that was in the cashier location, but had the ability to do way more. David Goodman now in charge of billing for our RBHS area. So we had great talent in there that could have done more and had the ability to get to different roles in the department. And actually, some of the things that were going on in the cashier's office, like when I asked, can you walk me through when you get a payment, what happens? And it was paper. And then when you look at these things and reevaluate them, you have great people on your team that could probably take on more, but some of the processes that they're taking on could also be automated.
You okay there? We laughed when you said the paper, because when I took over my role 5 years ago, I walked into an office that if you took all the paper in this room and piled it together, I know. It was on the desk and I was like, whoa,
Paper, yeah.
what is that?
Yeah.
And I'm like slowly backing out thinking I'm out of here. But over time, we worked very closely together to eliminate that, and one of Holly's tasks actually is to, in all of her free time, is to write processes to improve those things.
Yes.
The challenge to that, though, is getting people to follow those new processes,
Yes.
or those written ones, because, well, I've done it like this all the time.
Yes.
Well, it's wrong,
Yeah.
you know,
Absolutely.
so it's
And then it's also something to remember, I'm coming in only 7 years. There's some employees here that's on my team that's been here for like for a while. So imagine coming in as a toddler. I look at it, and you're trying to change the way how someone has been operating over a long period of time, and also having them understand where you're coming from, and they have me understand where they're coming from, and then meet in the middle somewhere. So that's something that was a bit challenging in the beginning. Ooh, we had some days, but I think they like me now.
But I think if I could just, one of the observations I've made, just again, talking with many of you in the room, campuses across the Northeast and the East team that I manage, there's 2 sides to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have the aging population that we're finding that's retiring. With those retirements, 2 things happen. It's the opportunity for change. It's also the loss of history and knowledge, which is so hard to overcome. I'd love to hear, I was talking with a large community college system, Mid-Atlantic, won't talk directly about them, but they have someone retiring in a year, and they're really like trying to think about, she manages this whole system. Now who's gonna do it?
Mm-hmm.
How do I hire someone to take everything on that she's taken on? And it really feels like it's an opportunity to review. But leading up to that retirement, I think most of the time you have a onboarding time. You've got the opportunity to really think about how that transitions. But how are you filling the knowledge loss? That's the thing that always puzzles me. COVID was a huge, lots of people took those, I refer to them as the golden parachutes, right? Through COVID, schools downsized, administrators retired, and a lot of history left, a lot of knowledge base left. How are your campuses dealing with some of that? Is it an opportunity for change?
It is.
Or is it, documenting everything before? What are some of the ways that you're combating not just the leadership change, but your team itself, yeah.
So we actually have a great example, and Catherine, I don't want to put you on the spot with David, but the position that David Goodman, if you could just raise your hand, took over was a position that was held by someone who's been at the university for 40 years, maybe 40 years doing the same thing, right? And so to transition someone new into that role, I am not here saying that the history was not helpful, but it was helpful to understand why that person was doing the things they were doing in that way.
Mhm.
And there was so much opportunity to do it differently. So he came in and he just took everything, understood exactly what he was doing. And what I like about people's minds sometimes, they sometimes sit and go, well, why were you doing it like that? Do you know if you just press blah, 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 it goes, I'm not saying that the history is not important, but it's important to understand why they were doing it, the way they were doing it, and perhaps sometimes a new way just, needs to be.
I love that. It's the why, right? Why? What is the end result that we're trying to accomplish?
Yes.
And we always know that there's so many different ways to get there, but fully comprehending the why. And I loved that. One of the university I was talking to, someone had retired. She'd been there for 40-something years, oversaw financial aid in the bursar's office, and then they went out for financial aid in bursar's office again. And then ended up dividing it. Like they were like, we can't hire someone that does both of these jobs. She had evolved into that over 40 years,
Right.
but they ended up splitting it and doing something different.
Right.
But one of the things that was interesting to me was they had done it this way, and people would say, well, why are you doing it that way? And they would be like, we don't know. We don't know. We don't know why we're doing it that way. That's what we were told to do. Yeah, so I love that, digging in
Done it that way, right?
and understanding the why behind it. And then can you process improve from there and still get to the same result, yeah.
I think this is something that Mary Beth actually touched on